Point Pleasant had changed. The small West Virginia town, once filled with tourists chasing stories of the strange winged creature seen decades ago, had grown quieter with time. The bridge that collapsed in 1967 had long been rebuilt, but people still lowered their voices when crossing it, as if the shadows beneath the steel still remembered what had fallen. In late autumn, the fog began to return. It rolled in thick from the Ohio River, swallowing the streets before sunrise and never fully leaving. Locals said the air felt heavier that year, as though something unseen was pressing against the town. At first, the signs were subtle. A series of car accidents along Route 2, each driver swore they'd seen glowing red lights hovering near the tree line just before the crash. Security cameras captured faint distortions in the fog, shapes that flickered at the edge of the frame, too tall and too fast to be human. Then came the sound, a deep, low hum that seemed to vibrate through walls and metal. No one could trace it. The power company blamed faulty transformers, but engineers found nothing wrong. The hum grew louder at night, pulsing through the valley like a heartbeat. An amateur radio operator named Henry picked up strange frequencies around the same time. At 3:12 a.m. each night, his receiver would burst with static, followed by a rhythmic pulse, 5 beats, then silence. He mapped the signals on a digital chart, tracing them to a single location on the outskirts of town, the abandoned TNT plant, where the first sightings had been reported half a century earlier. By mid-November, birds began vanishing from the sky above Point Pleasant. Entire flocks would take off from the trees and simply not return. Fishermen noticed the same thing in the river. The surface, usually alive with ripples, grew still, as if the water itself were holding its breath. When the fog thickened one night, a truck driver heading south swore he saw something massive perched on top of the bridge. He couldn't describe it clearly, only that its eyes glowed like coals and that it moved, not flying, but gliding, into the mist before he could blink. He told the story on a local radio show, laughing nervously. 2 days later, his truck was found abandoned near the riverbank, the engine still running. The police treated it as a missing persons case. The locals didn't. They remembered. Soon after, lights began to fail across the town. Street lamps flickered and died in perfect sequence, one by one, until whole streets were swallowed by the dark. A faint vibration could be felt beneath the ground when it happened, not like an earthquake, but something deeper, more deliberate. In the library's archives, a graduate student researching folklore noticed an odd pattern in newspaper records. Every major event in Point Pleasant, every flood, every fire, every disappearance, was preceded by reports of strange lights or shapes in the sky. It wasn't superstition. It was a cycle. The people who lived nearest the river began leaving small offerings by the bridge, coins, candles, trinkets. No one said why. They simply did it, the way people act on instinct when words no longer matter. By December, the fog no longer came and went. It stayed, a permanent veil that blurred the edges of the world. Those who dared to drive at night reported seeing wings unfolding above the treetops, impossibly wide, like the shadow of a creature too large to belong here. And through it all, that low hum continued, pulsing faintly from somewhere beneath the bridge, deep and steady, like something alive. Whatever haunted Point Pleasant had never really left. It had simply been waiting for someone to notice again. By the start of winter, Point Pleasant had become a town of half-empty streets and locked doors. The fog now moved like a living thing, not drifting, but crawling, rolling over fences and into windows, pressing against the glass like a curious hand. The hum that once came from beneath the bridge had deepened. It was slower now, almost rhythmic, like the breathing of something sleeping just below the surface of the earth. Cell service began to fail across the area. Radios picked up only static. Even the police scanners fell silent. What little news escaped the valley came through brief social media posts, half-written messages about shapes in the mist, about lights above the river, about power lines humming long after the electricity went out. At night, the fog glowed faintly from within, as though lit by something beneath it. Some said it was the reflection of the streetlights, but others noticed the lights no longer reached that far. The glow came from deeper inside, slow, pulsing red, fading and returning in uneven waves. A drone hobbyist decided to investigate, flying his quadcopter high above the fog one evening. The footage streamed perfectly at first: rows of dark houses, the silver curve of the Ohio River, the skeleton of the bridge. But then, the drone's camera began to shake. The signal flickered, distorted. For one brief moment, a shape appeared on the feed, massive, black, rising from the fog like wings made of smoke. The drone fell from the sky. The next morning, pieces of it washed up on the riverbank, covered in a thin layer of ash. Residents began leaving town in small groups, heading north toward safer ground. But the ones who stayed behind said the air grew warmer, heavier, as if charged with electricity. Car alarms went off for no reason. Windows vibrated in their frames. Animals refused to cross the bridge. Inside the library, the graduate student returned to his research. He traced the pattern of events through decades, always the same place, always the same signs: the hum, the fog, the lights, then disaster. He calculated the intervals, marking them against the town's history. The next one, he realized, was imminent. That night, the hum stopped. For the first time in weeks, silence fell over Point Pleasant. The fog lifted just enough to reveal the stars, cold and sharp against the black sky. For a moment, it felt as if whatever had haunted the town had finally gone. Then came the wind. It swept across the river in a single motion, bending trees and tearing signs from their posts. Lights burst in a line down the street, exploding one after another until the whole town was dark again. The hum returned, louder, deeper, vibrating through the ground like thunder that wouldn't end. Witnesses later said the bridge began to tremble, not from the wind, but from something moving beneath it. The water below rippled outward, as though disturbed by the passing of something vast and unseen. A flash of red light filled the fog, blinding and brief. When it faded, the sky itself seemed to twist, a distortion that rippled across the stars, bending them into patterns that didn't belong there. And in that shifting light, wings unfolded again. Not bird wings. Not anything born of this world. They stretched wide across the river, black as space, absorbing the glow around them. The creature didn't move with sound or speed. It simply was, a shape in the air that defied every rule of shadow and distance. For a heartbeat, every light in Point Pleasant flickered on. Homes, cars, lamps, all burning bright at once. Then, just as suddenly, they went out. When the power returned at dawn, the fog was gone. The air was clear, the river calm. But the bridge was empty, not damaged, not destroyed, just silent. The hum had vanished. The birds were gone. In the days that followed, strange magnetic readings were recorded across the region. Compasses spun wildly. GPS devices froze. Power grids fluctuated without cause. Scientists arrived, mapping the energy fields, but their instruments failed within hours. The town tried to return to normal. Stores reopened. Tourists came back, drawn by the legend. Yet those who had been there through the winter said Point Pleasant had changed. At night, The reflection of the moon on the river no longer looked the same, it wavered, like something beneath the surface was still breathing. Every few months, someone claims to see it again, a pair of glowing red eyes hovering above the tree line, or a dark figure perched high on a power line, motionless against the night sky. They say it doesn't chase or harm. It only watches. And always, when those sightings return, so does the hum. Deep, low, patient, as if waiting for history to repeat itself. Whatever came to Point Pleasant never left. It simply learned to wait longer between appearances. And somewhere in the stillness of that quiet river town, when the fog rolls in again, the air begins to vibrate. The lights flicker. And the people remember.